They said it couldn't be done. In the heart of Harare, where the noise of politics often drowns out innovation, one man quietly stared at the sky. His name? Maxwell Chikumbutso, an inventor without a formal engineering degree, a dreamer dismissed by many. And yet, on this day, standing beside a sleek, bird-like machine that didn't need a drop of fuel, he looked like a man who had already touched the future. This wasn't science fiction. This was Zimbabwe. The runway was unpaved. It was a stretch of forgotten tarmac outside a decommissioned air base near Goromanzi. But what stood parked at the edge of that field could only be described as revolutionary. The craft, a hybrid between a glider and a drone, shimmered with composite alloys that had never been named in any known aircraft registry. Its wings were long and light, almost like a predatory bird. But the strangest part? No fuel tank. No jet engine. Not even a propeller in sight. The only sound was a faint, harmonic hum, like a vibration from deep underground or from some unseen field around it. No sponsors. No military escort. No government clearance. Just one man. One machine. One destination. Cairo. Chikumbutso climbed inside, the door sliding shut behind him with a hiss that reminded onlookers of something more alien than man-made. The interior was minimal, almost surgical. Instead of buttons and levers, there was a glowing interface that responded to gestures, not touch. A dashboard of light. He looked forward. Eyes calm. Hands steady. And then it lifted. No roar. No build-up. No dust clouds. It just rose. The aircraft floated vertically for a few seconds before pivoting east, rising higher with a soft pulse of light from its underbelly. Observers below gasped, not in fear, but in disbelief. There was no way that thing should be flying, they thought. Not without combustion. Not without fuel. Not without physics having a say. But physics was silent today. By the time it reached cruising altitude, cell phones were out, live streams were being posted, and social media across the continent began to ask one collective question. What is this, and why haven't we heard about it before? From above, the African continent stretched like an old map come alive. Forests, mountains, deserts, and cities, all soon to become waypoints in what was shaping up to be the most unorthodox flight in recorded history. The craft didn't stop for fuel. It didn't need a recharge. It sailed above Lake Kariba, curved north past Lusaka, and crossed into the copper-colored skies of Tanzania. No engine fatigue. No vibration. The aircraft maintained a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat synced to the planet itself. At an altitude of 30,000 feet, Chikumbutso wasn't just flying. He was rewriting aviation as we knew it. Over Rwanda, as the sun dipped low and bathed the Virunga Mountains in molten gold, a satellite camera from a private aerospace company zoomed in on the aircraft, hoping to capture some clue, some evidence of propulsion. But what they saw left them baffled. No heat signature. No moving parts. Just a glowing trail, soft, blue, and ionized, suspended in the air behind it, like it wasn't disturbing the sky but collaborating with it. Inside, Chikumbutso adjusted nothing. The aircraft seemed to anticipate crosswinds before they hit, rebalancing its aerodynamics in real time. His only movement was a slight tilt of his wrist, triggering the HUD heads-up display, where symbols floated in what appeared to be Shona script and mathematical code intertwined. Not even halfway into the journey, but already whispers were surfacing. Had he reverse-engineered alien tech? Was this some military black project gone rogue? No. The truth was both simpler and more dangerous. He had listened. Listened to vibrations, to frequency, to natural law outside what textbooks permitted. For years, he'd spoken of greener energy as a spiritual force, one that existed in resonance with the universe, not opposition to it. But no one listened. Now, the entire world was watching. By the time the aircraft passed over South Sudan, military radars in 6 countries had locked onto it. But what disturbed them wasn't its presence, it was what wasn't there. No radio frequency. No electromagnetic disturbance. No heat. It wasn't even reflecting radar. It was passing through detection grids like a ghost through walls. In Ethiopia, Addis Ababa's aviation tower picked up visual confirmation at dusk, a glowing arc coasting silently over the Blue Nile Gorge. Children ran into the streets, pointing at the skies, some shouting the word Mutumwa, meaning messenger. But a messenger of what? Inside the cockpit, Chikumbutso leaned forward. A soft chime rang out. A new alert, not a warning, but a message, coordinates shifting automatically. The craft had adjusted its course. It was no longer going straight to Cairo. It was detouring to a place that didn't exist on any standard map. Coordinates deep in the white desert of Egypt, a zone long considered a magnetic anomaly where compasses spin and electronics flicker. A place ignored by satellites. Rumored to be haunted. Rumored to be sacred. That's where the aircraft was headed now. As he approached, Cairo Air Command demanded identification. But no signal returned. Chikumbutso was beyond traditional protocol now. He was guided by a different force, one he barely understood, one he'd tapped into not by accident, but by devotion. And then, as the stars above the Sahara shimmered into focus, something ancient awakened. A pulse. Low. Rhythmic. Like a heartbeat buried beneath sand for centuries. And the aircraft responded, not like a machine, but like a key sliding into a lock. Suddenly, instruments in planes 300 miles away blacked out for 6.4 seconds. And when they came back online, a strange golden flare was reported over the desert horizon, like a silent explosion of light, blooming upward, folding inward, and disappearing. Moments later, Chikumbutso's aircraft reappeared, directly above the Nile. Hovering. Still. Alive. But different. It had changed. The materials on its surface now shimmered with a pattern resembling ancient glyphs, Egyptian, Mayan, Dogon, all interwoven with symbols yet to be classified. As it began its final descent toward Cairo, the world didn't just ask how this had happened. They asked, what did he activate? As the aircraft descended over Cairo's night-lit skyline, something eerie unfolded. Street lights dimmed in waves as it passed overhead, not with electrical failure, but like a curtain gently drawn over the city. The Nile, reflective and ancient, shimmered beneath its belly like it recognized the return of something lost to time. Cairo's airport was on high alert. Fighter jets scrambled, waiting for orders that wouldn't come. The radar still showed nothing. To the system, the aircraft didn't exist. But thousands of eyewitnesses on rooftops, balconies, and crowded sidewalks watched it glide silently, unchallenged, as if the city had collectively agreed not to interfere. Then, without warning, it stopped mid-air, above the Giza Plateau, and hovered. Every phone camera in the region turned toward the heavens. The glowing craft pulsed softly above the pyramids like a living satellite. But then came the real shock. Beneath it, lights along the desert floor began to pulse back. In perfect synchronization. From the base of the Great Pyramid to the smaller temples, an ancient grid of unseen lines, ley lines, perhaps, illuminated in an orderly geometric pattern. Like a circuit board buried beneath the sands, waiting for centuries to be reawakened. And Chikumbutso, from inside the aircraft, watched his dashboard translate the pulses into real-time information. Not energy. Not data. Something older. Like language, encoded not in sound, but in vibration. A language that had been waiting to speak again. And now, finally, someone was listening. The aircraft began transmitting the pulse back downward, forming a closed loop of resonance between machine and monument. The sky trembled with quiet power. Not explosive. Not violent. Just deep. And then, something impossible happened. The capstone of the Great Pyramid, long lost to erosion or theft, materialized for precisely 11 seconds. Not stone, but energy, crystalline, translucent, humming, hovering above the peak before vanishing again. A projection? A memory? Or a relic phased out of time? No one knew. At that moment, Chikumbutso wasn't just a pilot. He was a witness. The aircraft shifted gently, recalibrated, and began its final descent toward an undisclosed landing site near the banks of the Nile. Its hum softened to a near silence, then disappeared entirely as the vehicle touched down. No wheels, no landing gear. It simply settled onto the earth like it had never left it. A dozen black SUVs raced toward the landing site. Not government. Not military. Their insignias were unrecognizable, geometric, minimalistic. Private, perhaps. But their intention was clear. Containment. But they were too late. Maxwell Chikumbutso had already stepped out. And in his hand wasn't a weapon or a manifesto. It was a small, palm-sized crystal, softly glowing in rhythm with the aircraft behind him. When the men approached, he held it up, not as a threat, but as a signal. And the aircraft, now silent and motionless, responded by folding in on itself. Not crashing. Not breaking. Just collapsing into a singular point of light, like time snapping shut. Gone. The desert was silent once again. But the signal had already been sent. The lead man from the convoy stepped forward, his earpiece buzzing with static as the signal scrambled surrounding electronics. He stared at Chikumbutso, not with fear, but a kind of silent awe, like he wasn't looking at a man anymore, but a catalyst. Behind him, the other operatives paused, visibly hesitant. They had trained for all kinds of threats, but this was uncharted. Chikumbutso didn't speak. He didn't have to. The crystal in his hand pulsed once, bright, deliberate, and suddenly every phone, drone, and surveillance satellite pointed at Cairo blacked out simultaneously. All over the world, news anchors paused mid-sentence, screens froze, streams stuttered, and an eerie, coordinated silence swept across the digital landscape. And then, images began appearing. Not of the flight. Not of the aircraft. But of equations. Star maps. Vibrational frequencies. Ancient symbols. Beamed into every smart device, every screen. A universal upload. One that bypassed governments, firewalls, and censorship. It was as if the machine, or whatever it had connected with, had decided to speak to the entire species, not through words, but through truths. Truths that had been buried, forbidden, or simply never known. By the time Chikumbutso was taken into custody, not as a prisoner, but as a guest of something far more clandestine, the crystal had already stopped glowing. But the information had already gone viral. Encrypted forums lit up. Physicists, linguists, and theologians scrambled to decode what they were seeing. Universities went into lockdown. Intelligence agencies issued silent directives. Do not interfere. Just observe. In Harare, old villagers lit fires and whispered of a prophecy, of a man who would fly without fire or feather, carrying the heartbeat of Earth in his chest. In Mali, Dogon elders recognized the star maps now appearing online. Maps they had passed down orally for 1,000 years, maps of Sirius B, long before telescopes could confirm it even existed. Something ancient had been remembered. And the epicenter of it all was one man. One aircraft. One impossible flight. From Zimbabwe to Cairo, Chikumbutso had not just piloted a machine. He had bridged two worlds. But the question now wasn't how. The question was why now. Because beneath the surface of all this wonder, something else had been awakened. Something not entirely benevolent. In Antarctica, a dormant satellite, long thought non-functional, lit up for the first time in 47 years. In the Mariana Trench, sensors picked up a rhythmic pulse matching the exact frequency of Chikumbutso's aircraft. And somewhere deep beneath the sands of Giza, a chamber, undocumented, undisturbed, began to vibrate. Softly, patiently, as if waiting for a return signal. Within hours, global seismic networks began to register faint, symmetrical tremors centered not on tectonic fault lines, but on sites of ancient significance. Angkor Wat, Teotihuacan, Stonehenge, all humming at the same harmonic frequency. And the frequency? Identical to the one that pulsed from Chikumbutso's aircraft over Giza. Coincidence was no longer a plausible theory. This was coordination. But by whom or what? Inside a sealed underground facility, deep beneath the Egyptian desert, Chikumbutso sat alone in a polished obsidian chamber. No lights, no guards, just silence, and the soft rhythmic glow of the now dormant crystal embedded in the wall across from him. A voice eventually broke the silence. But it didn't come from a speaker. It came from inside his mind. Not words, but meaning. Direct transmission. You have opened the resonance. Others will now awaken. Some will not understand. Chikumbutso's eyes flickered. He wasn't afraid. Somehow, deep down, he had known this moment was coming. His inventions, the self-powered radio, the perpetual energy generator, the electric car that charged itself, they hadn't been accidents. They were breadcrumbs, tests, trials, all leading to this. The voice continued. 12 frequencies, 12 nodes, 1 convergence. Suddenly, Chikumbutso saw a vision, not a dream, not imagination, but a map burned across the walls of his consciousness. A planetary grid, 12 points, each one pulsating with energy, interconnected through invisible lines. The aircraft hadn't just traveled from Zimbabwe to Cairo. It had activated the first node. And the rest? Still dormant.